Slowly but surely starting to win some of the leftover to understanding what the actual right-wing sort of traditionalist position is and why it's valuable. This is a fascinating article on the
Yeah, and I will just quickly say I've realised since becoming Christian, there are certain elements that the left should be able to interpret from the right wing perspective if you maybe communicate to them adequately. I'll let Saigon continue for now.
Atlantic called History is Running Backwards, Why Reactionaries Are Taking Over the World. And they're starting to understand why we are making the points we're making and what validity these points have in relation to the way that modern life is. So this article begins with a bit of a take on Tehran, obviously, but this is the important part where it begins. Many of us thought that the world would get more democratic as it modernized, but for the past quarter century we have seen a reversion to authoritarian strongmen. Donald Trump, acting like some 16th century European prince, has made the presidency his own personal fiefdom. Vladimir Putin.
I mean, I will just quickly say that I've recently started leaning more in the Leviathan, Hobbesian direction. There's no matter which way you cut and slice it, are hierarchical, and will order themselves in such a way. So it is preferable to have one strong leader rather than many inept leaders all causing chaos in a more pluralistic type of government.
Donald Trump, acting like some 16th century European prince, has made the presidency his own personal fiefdom. Vladimir Putin borrows ideas from reactionary thinkers such as Alexander Dugin to justify his imperial conquest of Ukraine. If you go on social media, you can see photos of trad wives baking cookies for their husband and 5 kids. The Secretary of Health and Human Services and his followers don't trust those newfangled inventions, vaccines. In 1999, it seemed that world affairs would be dominated by multilateral groups such as the European Union and the World Trade Organization, but now we are back to 19th century style great power rivalries between China and the United States, Russia and Europe, and Trump's national security strategy has even revived the Monroe Doctrine. Right. Interesting, isn't it? Because the thing about all of these things is that they didn't just come about for no reason. We haven't had a cyclical reaction backwards because everything was just going smooth as silk and all of the problems, or at least the majority of the problems that people had, were being taken care of by the liberal order, by the system.
Yeah, I mean, I was maybe under that illusion for a long time in my life as well. I would say more recently, over the last 10 years, to raise an eyebrow at some of the ideology and policies that the sort of left put forward, and subsequently why I find it very hard to be able to communicate with the sort of left wingers these days, because obviously they always want to start calling people racist and stuff just for sharing a somewhat nuanced opinion about something that they've decided is black and white.
The reason the world is changing as it is changing is because the liberal order was fundamentally premised on a series of untruths. And the problem with not believing things that are true is that when you are in contact with reality, but your beliefs are somewhere over there, miles away, there's a gap between what you think is and what actually is.
Yeah, and I think not to. I know that Saigon probably won't come at this from this direction because it's not religion such, but religion being absent from that relationship that is just described there is something I've realised that is fairly lacking, and I think even some non-religious people can spot it, but especially since the Christmas period when I was reborn and discovered that Jesus really was God on earth. I can understand how God plays a bigger role in our moral compass in determining what is right and wrong, and then we come to understand why things are right and wrong, rather than just doing things because God says so. We understand the reasoning for why He's telling us to do right and wrong.
And you lie to yourselves about what actually is and why what actually is in ways that don't solve the problem. And a problem that goes unsolved is a problem that festers, is a problem that compounds, is a problem that gets worse. And as things have been getting worse, as progress has advanced, it seems that we might have been progressing in the wrong direction, doesn't it? You got no one to blame for yourselves with any of these things. I mean, there just everything about this, right? The world would get more democratic as it modernized. Yeah, and it's fucking bad. Actually, we don't need a vote on every single little thing. What is more useful is to have a vote on one important thing, and then let the person we choose to do that important thing just sort things out. Right? And that's what's happening with Donald Trump. That's what's happening with Vladimir Putin, whether you agree with him or not, whether you like him or not. And I don't agree with him. I don't like him. I think Putin's just the average Russian strongman, but that's what they want.
Yeah, I would just say, just for clarity as well, I'm not really a fan of Putin at all. And that's not to say I'm like pro-Ukraine. I'm against the Ukraine war. I don't think Russia should have invaded at all. I don't think they have any legitimate reason to. I know people think they was chided into doing it, but I think that's a bit of a straw man. To be honest, that's not a particularly strong argument for Putin. And I don't know. I'll leave it there for now anyway. I'll let Sagan continue.
And you go on social media, you find the trad wives baking cookies. Yeah. Feminism was never actually what women wanted. It's only for now, right? In the young women now, between 18 and 25, I think it was, are the first generation ever to have a majority that consider themselves feminists. As I covered on the podcast today, 53% of women now consider themselves feminists. That was never the case. Never the case at all. In previous generations, for the boomers, it was about 28%. For Gen X, it was something like 29%. And for millennials, it was still only about 32%. Right? It's never been the case that most women didn't want the trad wife future, basically, and wanted the like freedom from men future.
Because you see this playing out as well. Like every now and again, there'll be somebody who was, really staunchly feminist and trying to be a boss babe, etc., and they have a mental breakdown on TikTok, start crying because people seem to love filming themselves crying for some bizarre reason, and they essentially grass on the rest of their sisters for saying that, why did we ask for this? Why would we choose to have to work when we didn't have to? And it's a very succinct point, I think, and it's I'm not trying to say that turn the arrow completely backwards. That'd be an infantile opinion to hold, to presume that we would be able to return society to a point where such that women just do not work. But I think there needs to be some sort of push made for women to be incentivized potentially just to be stay-at-home mums and fulfill the role as being the hub from which the home rotates round. And I think Andrew Wilson said something about this in one of his videos, that in one of his solutions would be that if women still want to get their qualifications, etc., once they've had their children, then the state could potentially pay for their university fees to get their qualifications, to have their career after they've had their children, which would be a good way to potentially incentivize such behaviors from women. What society does, I know that people that sounds coercive or manipulative, but that's what government is always doing at any point, is trying to incentivize or disincentivize certain behaviors within the populace electorate.
Most women didn't want that, and yet that's what was imposed on them anyway. Did it solve their problems? No. It made them miserable. It made them lonely. It made them wonder. It made them insecure and afraid, and wonder why the world seemed scarier than it seemed when their grandmothers were around, and their grandmothers lived through 2 world wars. So, what I'm saying is that all of these things are failures of modernity, failures of the liberal order, right?
Yeah, because a lot of people seem to take democracy for granted, I think, a little bit. Like, they presume that because it comes from ancient Greece and they have it now, that it's just like always been around, but it's not. Its role within human history is infinitesimally small compared to the other sort of feudal systems and everything else that have existed on Earth. I'm not trying to say that we should just completely get rid of democracy completely, but I think people need to realize that it is quite a novel idea, we'll say anyway.
The stuff on vaccines, I'm actually not hot on, but there are questions there, right? There are unanswered questions. Why is autism so prevalent now? I don't know, but there are unanswered questions to be had there, and the problem is there are lots of people whose careers are predicated on not answering those questions. And people are aware now that you cannot just blindly trust the science, because the science itself has an agenda. And this whole, it seemed like world affairs would be dominated by multilateral groups, such as the EU and the WTO. Yeah. It turns out that's just not how international powers sustain themselves. And in fact,
Yeah, I think this is something I've had to reconcile with in coming to Christ recently, and just over the last 10 years. I mean, I came to Christ at Christmas, but over the last 10 years, I've had to reconcile just that the optimism that humans won't be greedy was rather childish, and I've kind of had to abandon that. Although I would say coming to Christ, I've sort of it's been lessened a little bit, and I might consider that there are still people out there that won't be greedy. They are probably very, very rare, I would say.
it was just the hegemonic power of the United States, backed up by Europe morally, and in part militarily, that imposed this on the world. Well, when that partnership becomes too weak to impose itself, it's revealed to be a great power style parochial imposition rather than a rationally agreed conclusion that all parties signed up for. Because at the end of the day, whether you like Russia or Ukraine or Putin or whatever, like, he has his reasons. And if you can't understand his reasons, again, you'd have to agree with them. But if you can't understand the reasons, then you can't have a reasonable discussion about the thing.
And I would say, I don't know if this is Sargon's point at the minute, but I would say overall, I've noticed that generally many people have a scant understanding of geopolitics. And it's not to say I'm an expert, not, but I would say I've come to the conclusion now, maybe understand more than the general Tom, Dick, or Harry that counter in the streets. But yeah, people like to come to quick solutions, little sound bites, I suppose, like you would do on Twitter back in the day. Quite a limited description of what a solution is about and what the solution is. Yeah, which is obviously quite childish when you talk about geopolitics because it's incredibly complex. Because it's like obviously cultures and nations in relation with each other with their own unique and sometimes distinct, still similar histories. So it's a lot more complicated than many people would credit, I would think.
Like, like I said, I don't support Putin. I don't support the invasion of Ukraine, obviously. But to pretend like it was incomprehensible is just liberal bias, frankly. Anyway, let's carry on. We used to have a clear idea of where modernity was heading, towards greater autonomy and equality, secularism, stronger individual rights, cultural openness, and liberal democracy. Progress was supposed to lead to the expansion of individual choice in sphere after sphere. Science and reason would prosper while superstition and conspiracy mongering would wither away.
I mean, that was presuming that when we allowed people to integrate with our culture, they were even going to attempt to, would be that we would hope that they would not keep their in-group preferences, and that they would try to seek to understand the how morals work within Western societies. But it would appear that many just do not if you let them in too fast. Like for instance, many cultures still believe in like blood feuds or blood. Blood is part of the name, anyways. Like blood feuds or something like that, where it essentially it translates in Western ideas as like sins of the father. So people are still responsible for what has come for before they were even born if they are attached by blood to that father, village, people, nation even, and that is why some of them don't see any qualms about taking advantage of the British culture and not integrating and ever coming to the same conclusions as us in how we ought to live together because of exactly what Saigon described in here. For instance, we might think taking advantage of a foreigner in our country might be bad, so they do not understand what's happening outside where they would normally be. But if we go to another country, they see us as being an opportunity presented to them by the god or gods that they need to take advantage of that situation. And, like rob you, take your passport, or any of these innumerable other things that they can do because the universe has presented them with an opportunity. That is a fundamental difference in some cultures that they do not share with us. So anyway, I'll continue.
Turns out that was yesterday's vision of the future. Yeah, and do you know why? Do you know why that was yesterday's vision of the future? That was yesterday's vision of the future because we arrived there. And it was not everything it was meant to be cracked up to be. Like, we don't need autonomy, right? No one actually has autonomy. Autonomy is a total fiction, right? Nobody's autonomous. The only person who'd be autonomous would be a Robinson Crusoe, washed up on a beach. And all this 19th century ideology, as Karl Marx put it, designed to create socialized Robinson Crusoes, was actually a fucking terrible idea.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Sagan's saying here. I would maybe disagree, like, in one instance, I would say that we still have choice and free will from a Christian perspective because God makes us choose between good and evil. I would say that in that instance with Robinson Crusoe, he's sort of limited because he cannot interact with another person. So consequently, can only ever choose God because he cannot sin against anybody else. So potentially masturbating while he's on his own, I suppose, could be the only way he can ever really slight God or curse God to push him off God's path. So it's interesting now, I suppose, that autonomy, while Saigon is correct there, in contrast with the Christian principle of free will, from what I understand to be a fact as well. And now there is, I wouldn't maybe call that a paradox, but it's certainly something I've not thought about until Saigon has just mentioned it. Is correct assertion that none of us truly have autonomy in our lives because we have to interact with other people. That is quite an interesting distinguishment.
Actually, it's not good for us to be all alone living in a society where we have a social contract to dictate our behavior rather than just being normal humans, right? That's not good. Because as soon as some lunatic decides, I don't care about being rational, I'm breaking the social contract, you're totally vulnerable. This is what the attacks on trains are. And you see them in America where just some fucking lunatic starts, and everyone's just like, okay. There's a problem with that guy. And yet he was just left to roam in society. And again, there are so many things here. Like equality. Who asked for this? Like, the more equality you have, the greater the decline is. Equality is a leveling philosophy. And to get to the end goal of equality, where everyone has the same, means to get to a point where everything is at the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, correct. Everything there becomes a grey mush. We become ants. I'm not unique in saying this. It's said many times before, but maybe if you know the quote is from, maybe you can let me know in the comments. But communism is a perfect political system for ants, not human beings.
So the people who earn and the people who don't earn end up in the same position. That's awful. I mean, it looks like theft, doesn't it, frankly? But it means that everything is degraded. It's a doctrine of degradation. And it was understood to be in its own time. And yet, well, no, we can't give up equality. The precious fucking God. Oh, not equality. Okay, but how about good? How about virtue? How about separating the wheat from the chaff? How about making the world a better place? No, we want equality, which means making the world a worse place. That's what that means. Secularism, stronger individual rights, cultural openness, liberal democracy. They're falling apart. They're fucking falling apart. Like, we have strong enough individual rights. In fact, we're so pathological about this. We're like, oh, what foreign rapist who's arrived on our shores? Well, I mean, what about his individual rights? I don't care. I don't care, and I didn't ask. I don't want to be burdened with them.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I wouldn't. I'm not an ethno-nationalist. I don't think we should completely abandon immigration. And probably going to upset some people, but definitely, even as a Christian, I still think that if somebody commits a crime, that we're out. You know what I mean? Like, still believe that Jesus calls us to be kind to foreigners for a reason, but that doesn't tolerate their disrespect at such a disproportionate amount as we are do right now. We cannot must take corrective action to stop evil from being committed.
Right? The rights of people are parochial to those people and the cultural context in which they live, the country in which they live. Right? Rights are not abstract and universal. Even in the liberal view, they reside within ourselves. So, like, this whole thing where we've perversely made the rights that we were supposed to use ourselves to protect against the government as a group, as a people, have been inverted upon us, into which we've become atomized. Again, the autonomy.
Yeah, it's completely correct there as well. I mean, I don't think I've got a lot to add on that point. I'll let him continue.
Equally atomized. And the government has promised, hand on heart, I pledge to be the defender of your rights against me. No, this is demented. The government is the abuser in the conversation about human rights. What are we doing? That's the bad person, and you're putting your faith in them in order to protect the things that protect you from them. Mental. It's wrong. It's completely wrong-headed. And of course, liberal democracy. Oh, we need universal suffrage, do we? Oh, do we? We need people who don't pay any tax whatsoever having exactly the same share in this country as the people who pay the tax and don't take the benefits. Is that really what you think a sustainable society looks like? Do you think those people who just take will vote according to conscience and be like, well, no, I mean, I know I'm a person who just takes, but I mean, those people who just pay, well, they need to make sure the society is geared towards them so they can continue paying. No, they just keep taking and taking and taking until now, literally this, was it?
Yeah, exactly. And that is unchristian. It says in the Bible, and I'm not that good with the Bible at the minute, so if you know the passage, let me know. But I believe it says, he who does not work shall not eat. So if these people actually are just taking, then that is not what God intended, and we should not be allowing that to keep happening.
This week, was it last week, we found that actually the tax revenues were not equal to the benefits we pay. And 53% of the country are on benefits and net beneficiaries rather than net taxpayers. We have arrived in the sort of proto-South Africa position where we are just in a failing state, where it's just worth looting the treasury for as much as you can before this whole thing collapses. Your liberal democracy did this to itself with its own philosophies of individuals. Oh God, no one can possibly have a standard of living below X. It's like, why? If they don't do any goddamn work, what do they think is going to happen? Oh no, we've got a moral obligation to make sure that everyone... So we just have to steal from the hardworking to give to the lazy. I'm not saying there's not a place for people who are literally crippled and can't...
Yeah, I mean, it's correct. We can't. It cannot be this lopsided. The burden cannot be put upon such a small contingent of the population, disproportionately help another proportion of the population which shouldn't be as large as it is. Sorry, I got confused there. I was going to say that there's more people contributing than taking out, which is obviously I messed up my word in there. I'll let Sargon continue for now because he's obviously more eloquent than I am. Sort of bungled there a little bit.
To have some kind of government assistance or pensions or whatever, but that's just not the case. Considering in this country, a quarter of people qualify for disability. A quarter. 1 in 4 people in Britain today is meant to be a cripple. Bull.
That's a bit nuts. I mean, I don't have any disability or anything like that, so it's interesting, but people have mentioned it to me. Somebody once said that they claim for autism, I think, or something. I can't remember exactly what they said it was. It said, "Oh, you could probably get." Oh, I don't know. You know me, they were trying to tell me how to game the system. I have never did it, but it is interesting from what Sagon's saying. It's a quarter of people, if even people, that conceivably work that would qualify for disability, is a bit showing that the system has broken.
Bullshit. What they are is a benefits cheat. Okay? Bullshit. Did we lose a war? Do you see war veterans on their bloody crutches stumping around? No. We didn't lose a war. This was just a system that was easy and incentivized people to take advantage of it. And so they are. And so now it's crippling us. And so you sit there going, well, I can't believe modernity is something that people are becoming against. Yeah, no, because it's fucked itself up. Science and reason would prosper while superstition and conspiracy.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave it there anyway. I'll put the link in the description if you want to check out the rest of what Sargon has to say on this. But I will just finish off by saying that modernity has completely wrecked the system. And it's sad in a way because growing up, I suppose, in the 90s, sort of thing, society promised a world to me that never transpired and was seemingly taken away, especially during the 2008 financial crash. It's been a tough pill to swallow. How disappointing the world is. The only good thing that I will add is that now that I found Christ, I do have renewed vigor and hope, and so I have got this YouTube channel. So if you liked what I've had to say so far, not the best at the minute. If you want to support me on my journey, feel free to drop a subscribe. Please like the video as well. That will help with the algorithm. I'll see you in the next video. Toodaloo.